Welcome back to another episode of Her Faith at Work. I think you're going to really love this episode today. We are talking all things leadership with a good friend of mine. Her name is Doris Savron, and she is a sought-after executive leadership expert with over 30 years of experience. And she is what she terms a transformation catalyst through her international conferences, speaking, consulting. Basically, she does all the things. She's been interviewed on ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox TV, and radio with over 70 different interviews across various broadcasting channels, podcasts, etc. She has been a published writer for various outlets such as HR.com, chiefexecutive.net. She was a Greater Phoenix Chamber of Commerce Athenia finalist and has spoken to some small groups and large groups of over 2,000. Doris has over 23 years of experience in higher education and has served on multiple boards for businesses and nonprofits. She's also mentored over 800 women in leadership through a variety of different programs. She has her MBA and is in her dissertation stage for a doctorate in management and organizational leadership. Seriously, she's an amazing wealth of knowledge. Not only does Doris have all of these accolades to her credit, she has done missionary work in Zambia, South Africa, Mexico, and India. She loves international travel and currently resides in Arizona. I can't wait for you to listen in on the conversation that I have with my friend Doris. So let's get to it.
Truth time. When's the last time you raised your hands for a swift kick in the pants? Well, I'm the no-nonsense type friend who's going to tell you when you have food in your teeth. So let's get right to it. This is your infusion of sacred and secular, calling you higher into who God created you to be, how intimately faith applies to every part of your life, and how you can live that faith walk every single day in the marketplace. I've felt the tension of separation of church and state. I've been one of a few women at a table of men for decades, and I've stood my ground. Are you ready to do the same? These tools, resources, and interviews are meant to do just that. I'm Jan Touchberry, and it's time to share her faith at work.
I think the best way to always start these things is to just give people a little window into who you are and what you do. Tell us all the things about Doris.
Well, I'm Doris Savron, and I have worked in roles of leadership for over the last 30 years. I love my job. I love being able to serve people that have been on my various teams. I just love advocating for people and creating environments where people can just be themselves and use their gifts and talents. And so I've done that in a number of different ways through my job, but I also teach at the university level, which gives me an exposure to students for a longer period of time. Then my personal time, I love to travel. I love to meet new people, love to experience new cultures. It's just another way to just get exposed to different perspectives of thinking and what's important to people. So I feel like it just makes me stronger as a leader, being able to do that. And then I love my family, and I have nieces and nephews that as much time as I can give and spend with them, I will make time for that. So
That's so awesome. Yeah, your travel is something that I am very envious of. I just live vicariously through all of your pictures on social media because you've been so many amazing places. And so yeah, I just I want to travel like Doris when I grow up.
come with me next time.
Okay. I am curious what it is like to be in the university environment as somebody who went to LEU, Life Experience University.
Yeah.
I'm everything I know is self-taught and gleaned from the people that God puts in my sphere. And to me, you being in this higher education environment and in leadership of that is that's like next level, and it's a little bit to me. So tell me about the environment that you're in on a daily basis. What is your actual job description? Like, what do you do at the university besides teaching?
So my official title is Vice Provost, and I oversee our colleges and the deans and the different programs. I also oversee
Wow.
our assessment teams, which evaluate the learning to ensure that our students are learning what they're supposed to be learning. And then I also oversee our design of curriculum and how we work with faculty to be able to deliver those experiences in the classroom. So,
That's
and I've been
awesome.
there 24 years, almost 24 years. And I continue to teach just because it does give me good exposure to the work that we're doing
Sure.
and how to continue to make that better.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so in leadership in that at that level, I mean, obviously I can't say this from experience, but I would guess that the leadership at that level is pretty high pressure. Is that in a lot of ways, would it be
Yeah,
considered a high pressure environment?
yes, there are a lot of, yes, I would agree. It feels like work is never done. There's always things to be working on. And with the evolution of technology and AI and how industries are changing, we're constantly having to look at what are we doing inside the curriculum to prepare people? And then how do you do that with also knowing people have big responsibilities to just keep things running and going as we have pretty big student volume. And so there's lots of decisions to be made, and we work pretty quickly to make sure we're aligning to what the employers and market need. And so you're having to have lots of conversations because nothing is done in a silo. So you're having to work with different groups of people and having to understand their needs. I've just learned to balance what are the priorities that to keep us focused. What
Yeah.
are the things that come up that we didn't expect? And are those things items that we should consider dropping something else and replacing with that, or does that have to wait until the next cycle of planning? And
Hmm.
then you have to keep people focused because it's easy to get drawn with all these new things that are coming and get excited about it, but you have to think about how do you execute that at scale. But it's knowing your priorities, knowing what you're aligning to, continuously keeping communication lines open, working together with different groups of people. We have amazing people in the organization. It's what's kept me there so long, just passionate about education.
Hmm.
It's just tapping into all the knowledge, collective knowledge helps us keep balance on the pressure.
I know that a lot of the stuff that you just named, people can identify with at different levels depending on where they're at in their own business because it's stuff that we all deal with on, in our own way, right? But you are passionate about teaching leadership and leadership principles and leadership skills to people. What is your why? What drew you to teaching leadership and really coaching? I mean, you coach in different business scenarios
I
on the
do.
leadership
I
level,
do.
right? Yeah. So tell me what
I
drew
do.
you to the leadership
Yeah.
topic.
So I want to take a step back and talk about first, like what drew me to education, and then I could talk about leadership because I think they're connected. So I'm first generation college graduate. I'm also first generation American. My parents came over as refugees and never got an opportunity to finish their education. They met in the US, and as they were raising their family, um, and our family kept saying, you need to take advantage of this education. It opens doors, it gives you the ability to make your own decisions and carve your path. And so I just took that seriously and then just realized I fell in love with learning because I watched how, as I learned new things, how like perspectives opened and just the joy of being able to learn a new skill or do something new. And then as I started to progress through my high school years, I knew that I wanted to go to college, but my parents didn't have a clue what that would take. They didn't have the money. So then I started watching and learning from friends of parents of what are they telling their kids to do. And I just followed those footsteps.
That's
And then I
awesome.
had some great teachers and leaders in the high school I was at that just invested in me and made sure I had information as well, kind of guided my steps. And then I found myself at college getting involved in different organizations. And through from like early on high school through college and even after, I was always put in these leadership positions. So in high school, it was always, the team captain of sports, and I was involved in student organizations. And then in college, I was an officer in the organizations that I was a part of. And then um, got a job out of college, and within 6 months was promoted to manager as one of the youngest leaders in the organization. I felt like the learning and the ability to always be willing to listen and try new things and work with others was essentially what makes a good leader. As I fell in love with the jobs I was doing, I knew that I wanted to continue to help others learn because I saw what value I got from people pouring into me. So that started my love for leadership. And then I had work experiences where I had great leaders and didn't have great leaders. And so it was devastating to the team when you don't have good leadership because there's so much dependent on communication and how that person sets up the environment that I vowed to be somebody that would lead well.
You said something that captured my attention because I think at some point in our adult lives, most people can identify with working under someone who doesn't have strong leadership skills. And
For
you're right,
sure.
it's hard. It's really hard. So coach me, Doris. Just coach me for a minute. What would you say to somebody who is in a position that they are underneath someone who doesn't have great leadership skills? But I always hear lead up. If you can lead up.
managing up, managing
Yes.
up as much as you're managing across and down. Yeah.
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 It's
Um,
hard.
yeah, I agree. I've been in a couple of situations where I did not have the best leader that I reported to, and I was leading a team as well at the same time.
Mhm.
And it was a real struggle to make sure that I would buffer my team from some of the pieces of that. So I would take the hit for a while for that. But then I started to realize, I really believe in this organization. I really do love what I'm doing. How do I create an environment where I can still thrive, knowing that it's not my job to improve that leader, but I can certainly make suggestions and try to create environments and take maybe some ownership of things that would maybe control the environment and allow that leader to work in the areas where they were stronger. And so I would
Mm.
offer to take on things or offer to be responsible for certain things like meetings or huddles or certain decisions and projects. So that way I could actually alter the environment a little bit, knowing that that was not necessarily that leader's strength.
Mhm.
In one situation, though, I did really have to evaluate, like, okay, how important is this role? I left an organization because I just couldn't do it anymore. And so sometimes that's where I would say you need to know your values, you need to know what's important to you, and you need to understand the work that you're doing and have to weigh those, like balance those. And sometimes you need to go and offer that feedback on your way out. And other times you just need to take ownership of different things and offer feedback. Like, I am a leader that I really appreciate my team of leaders giving me feedback when I haven't gotten something right. So
Mm.
also
That's
I try
good.
to create an environment where trust is built both ways because I do feel like as you grow in leadership positions, people aren't willing to give you feedback because there's just this awkward, I guess, angst that people have that maybe it'll be held against me or it's not going to be
Yeah.
received well and what's that going to do. But we have blind spots too. And so I appreciate when people are willing to give me feedback, but it takes building trust in the relationship. And in the position where I had a leader where that trust wasn't there, I worked hard to build it and then started to give feedback. And we were able to have good conversations. And they never were going to be good at those things, but they were able to focus on the areas that they were and let me run with the things that were more my talent. And I was able to change a little bit of the team culture as a result of it. So
That's good.
it just, the circumstances really depend on what actions are best to take because you may have to leave the organization if there isn't a willingness to change that culture.
Yeah, that's really good. So, what about people who are not in a leadership position yet, but they're aspiring to be in leadership positions, and it is a challenging environment, where people I've heard, cancel culture. And
Yeah,
it can come
yeah.
around and bite you in the butt a little bit when you're in that situation where almost between a rock and a hard place. So, do you have advice that you would give to these aspiring leaders when it's not easy?
Sure. So I would say again, going back to what do you value? What's important to you? I usually call it the hill. What hill are you willing to take? So I know what my guardrails are. I know what I can actually tolerate because not everyone's perfect. There's always going to be circumstances where there's going to be things about our jobs or things about our environments that we're not going to always like.
Right.
But there are also going to be great things that we're inspired by. And so to me, it's really understanding who you are and what's important to you first, because you'll then understand what things are worth fighting for and what things are worth pushing through and hanging tight. as the environment continues to change. And so if you don't know that, it's easy to be distracted and pushed around by things that just don't feel good. And so for aspiring leaders, the first thing I would say is watch the people that you admire or you
Mhm.
respect and learn from them. So take the time to get to know them, ask questions. Before I became a leader, I would ask for time with other leaders that I really respected and just said, hey, would you just spend some time with me? I have some questions because I am looking to grow in the future and I just want to learn from you. I really admire your approach and want to be able to learn from it. And then as I grew to different levels, I would always look for that next level leader or the leader that's in a position 2 or 3 steps ahead of me to be able to learn from them as well. Just I was put in an environment to be able to use my leadership skills and test my leadership skills. And then those individuals got, when there was an opportunity to grow, they would remember me and they give me those opportunities to take on leadership roles. So leadership is not easy. So really evaluate your reason for wanting to lead. Because sometimes people will do it for a title and money, and that you're not going to survive long term if that's your
Right.
driver. It really has to be about serving people. And if you're really, really, really aspiring to serve people and that you feel like that's your gifting, then you're going to find ways to get to the hard stuff. You'll find ways to fill your bucket while trying to overcome some of the challenges because it's not easy to do. You are having to manage expectations of the organization and those that you report to, while you're also trying to manage expectations of those who are looking to you to lead them. And sometimes those can be in contradiction. And so you have to
Yeah.
balance that
Yeah.
at times.
For sure. I think if you're in a place where you're in a difficult work environment and there's conflict that you're having to navigate, I think everything that Doris just said is so important. You can also go back to episode 11 with Corey Brock, where she speaks directly to handling conflict in the workplace. I think there's some great little nuggets in that too. But what you just said that I think stuck out to me is evaluate why you're looking for a position of leadership.
Right.
It's
Right.
it's it's a gut check, right? Are you wanting
Yep.
this for the right reasons? And if you are, then great, let's wade in to the mess and the chaos and learn through the process. What are some attributes that you see in the most successful leaders? Because I know that you are around a lot of them.
I'd say the first one is they're really motivated and invested in spending time to get to know the people around them, whether it's their own team or a team of people that they have to just communicate with and interact with regularly. They know they're individuals, they ask questions, they're curious, they spend time understanding what's important to them and what they want to achieve in the future. So that's one, is that relationship building. Two, being authentic, like really letting the team and the people that you're interacting with see who you are, what's important to you, and how you handle tough situations. So they need to see that vulnerable side as well. Because if you create this picture where everything's great, you don't make a mistake, it's not reality, and that can chip away a little bit at trust.
Mm,
And then I would say communication is critical, is just really making sure people know what's happening, where you're going, why it's important to go that direction, and then what their role is in helping move in that direction and what the team goals are. And then really taking the time to acknowledge work that's well done, recognizing and in the moments and in an authentic way, not just because you are checking it off the list that I just said thank you to somebody, but really taking the time to see people in there at their best and sharing why you appreciate that. Like what did it impact? How did it impact the team? How did it impact you? And thanking them for the work for sure.
yeah, that's really good. And I think so for me, I in my business, I have people that I can do that with, but as somebody in vocational ministry, I work with a lot of volunteers. So,
Right.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like that's even doubly important to have all of those same
Oh, for
qualities when you're
sure.
dealing with volunteers because they're not getting paid.
Oh, absolutely. It's that probably it's even more critical to help them understand the role that they play, how you're
Mhm.
going to need them to support, and then acknowledging and recognizing and saying thank you. There's nothing worse than showing up as a volunteer and there's nothing for you to do, and you set that time aside to give back.
Yeah.
Or when you don't feel like it's appreciated or recognized, because you're sacrificing your personal time to be able to go do something for someone. So I think it's even more critical to communicate as lead, because I've led a team of volunteers for projects and trips, and it's critical to keep those lines of communication open. I will say one more thing, that I think is a really great attribute of effective leaders is they're not afraid to have hard conversations and say the things that a lot of people are thinking but are afraid to step up and say. So I would say hard conversations, meaning that if there are people on the team who are not in alignment to vision or direction and their behaviors are becoming disruptive, like having those conversations, but giving them an opportunity to recognize, hey, this isn't going to work. Here's what I need from you. And then allowing them to opt in.
Mm,
But then when it doesn't work, like making sure that people know that it's not tolerable, because there's nothing worse to top performing people and people who are invested all in to see you not require that of everybody equally. And then the courage to like push back on decisions, like, because there are going to be times where there's tough decisions to be made and you can fall into groupthink with a team of other leaders, really making sure that when things don't feel right or comfortable, speaking up. Now my ideas or feedback aren't always taken, but I know that I won't have a regret that I haven't said anything. And I learned that lesson early on when I didn't speak up, and there was consequences to those decisions that hurt people. People left. To this day, it's still my barometer when it's time to say something that's hard and I start to second guess whether I should speak up or not. I remember that day that I will never do
mm.
that again. And I use my voice to be able to influence direction and decisions.
That's a really good segue because I think I know that there's some men who listen to my podcast, but the majority of them are women. And I
Yeah.
think in a lot of scenarios, women's voices don't carry the same weight that men's voices do in whatever organization you're in. And so you can have the best intentions and desires to speak up and use your voice, especially when you're gifted in a way that maybe the people that are making the decisions aren't, or they can't see the things that you can see. I use the example as a woman who has been in a man's world and ministry for my almost my adult all my adult life. And you can talk and you can talk and you can talk and you're using your voice and you're trying to add value to the organization, but when no one's listening and it seems to be making zero impact. The example that I use is for a long time, I felt like, I don't anymore, but I felt like, they train elephants when they're little, they put a chain around their ankle and then chain them so that they can only go so far. And then when they're older, they take the chain off, but the elephants are so trained that they can only go so far that they just don't ever venture past this little area that they've been raised to stay put in. And I feel like women are in that space so often that they just get conditioned. Okay, this is your box, just stay in your box. And you can use your voice inside these little parameters, but if it goes out, nobody's really going to care. And so speak to the woman who is in that type of scenario, in that type of situation, that they know that they have value that they can add to whatever
Yeah.
organization or business that they happen to be in, but they feel like it's falling on deaf ears.
So I will say that there was a recent study that was done that said 70% of women in highest levels of position, this is the C-suite, so CEOs, chairs of departments, like the main role in that organization, 70% of them have felt imposter syndrome at one point or other in those roles. Now men feel it too, so it's not just a thing that women
Sure.
feel, but it's more common with women. And so it's normal to second guess, but then you got to recognize that you're there for a reason and go back to the reason you're there, right? Remind yourself of all the works and the work you've done, the achievements, the recognition, and the reason why you were put in that position. So that's one, is like making sure you do that. Two, it's really, again, understanding what's important to you and being able to speak up to that, because your perspective is important in that room. I was early for the first 10 years of my career, I was usually the only female in the room, and I was the youngest. It was intimidating
Yeah.
to be in a room of very talented, experienced people, and then to be the only soft voice in the room because, just tone in general, men's voices are deeper and louder. And so you do have to be intentional when you're speaking up so it can be heard. I found allies, like I would, before the meeting, share ideas with other groups of people and leaders, and then we go in together with an idea. So that's another way that you can amplify your voice.
That's a
What
great
I have
idea.
also done as women, as a woman, as you get into these roles of leadership, be super sensitive to it because it's very easy to to not see it as you get promoted, but it's happening around you too. So be a woman that's recognizing when another woman's voice has to be amplified as well, and
Mhm.
say, well, wait, I want to hear, like, you know, Susie had something to say. I want to hear it. Can you repeat what you just said? And then
Yeah.
amplify the idea. And it's a good idea. And we've learned, I think we learned this. It was one of the prior presidents' cabinet leaders where they did that for each other. They didn't just amplify what was said, but they amplified the person's name that said it. So then it really does draw
Mm.
attention that there are other ideas and perspectives out there. And then I would say the third thing is finding a community. It is so important to be in a community where you're getting feedback, you're getting an ability to learn from each other because people have different experiences. But you're also getting the opportunity to share what's happening and get different perspectives on how to resolve it. So I've always found communities as I was growing in my leadership, and those communities change as I move into different leadership roles, so that I'm in an environment of people that are experiencing what I'm experiencing at the level of leadership that I'm at, because those things are different as you grow into different leadership roles. And so that community becomes a support system. It becomes an area to grow because sometimes we may think our voice is not being heard, and it could be our approach, how we're trying to inject
Yeah.
our information or comments, and it's not being received well. And that
Mm.
feedback could be a growth opportunity if you're leveraging, feedback from the different groups of or communities that you're in to share those challenges.
That's really good. That's really, really good. When you're dealing with young leaders who come into your organization that have different ideas, and maybe it's not the way that has been done in the past, but I feel like young leaders, especially when they're coming in with all these fresh ideas, they have fresh eyes, they have fresh ways of doing things. But when there's the status quo or the leaders that are very comfortable with the way that things have been done for the last XYZ number of years, what do you tell those leaders to help them really navigate that space? Because my hope is that we're always getting an infusion of people who are younger than we are, who do have those fresh ideas, who bring new things to the table, but not
Yep.
everybody's open to what they have to say.
Yeah, so what I would say is it works two ways too, because I've seen young leaders come in and have all these ideas, but do it in judgment of
Mm.
past decisions or current culture. So I would say first thing is take the time to get to know the people around you, get to know the organization, get to understand the decisions that have been made and why things are done the way they're done, and then use the different feedback loops that are available. Like on my team, we have a platform we use. If anyone in the organization has an idea for our team, they have an ability to send it in and describe why they think it's a good idea and where it might move the needle for us. And
I
then we
love that.
evaluate those regularly and bring them back to the team. And then we'll reach out if we want more information, or we'll say, hey, this is on the cycle for the next planning session. And a couple of times we've moved ideas up and stopped doing other work. And so it opens up for me, it's valuable to hear the different perspectives. And some of the most valuable ideas come from different departments and those closest to our students because we don't interact with them every day like they do. And so that's
Mhm.
why it's important to find a way to take those in. But just because an idea is not accepted doesn't mean it's valuable. You've got to also understand not everything can be done right now. Not everything could be afforded in the budget to change. And so just
Yeah.
understanding those components, right? Like timing and end of things is important too. So the context is important, but I would say sharing their ideas, continue to share the ideas, but understand that not every idea is going to be implemented. I could tell you many ideas that I've offered and that have not been implemented, but there have been some that have. And so I just learned to understand sometimes not everything's possible, because you do have people that have capacity for change. There's a limit to how much people can change and continue to learn over and over again. So
Talk to the inexperienced leader right now who has been put into the position of leadership and is doubting the amount of experience that they have versus these other people. Like you talked about being the youngest person in the room around a table
yeah.
who had very experienced leaders. So, what advice would you give to those leaders who might be staying small because they're just
Yeah.
doubting even their experience level?
Yeah. So I would say every leader that gets promoted into their first leadership job is not ready, because the role is different from the role you came from. Like, so
Right.
think about it. You're promoting top performers that are individual performers, and you're putting them into a role that requires a whole different set of skill set: communication, giving feedback, making decisions, prioritizing work, where a lot of that would have been done for you when you're an individual contributor. So organizations do not do a good job of onboarding new leaders. And so you can't wait for that.
Mm.
So if you're a new leader and you feel not ready, it's okay. That's a common feeling. And there are ways. We are so blessed with the resources that are available today that are free. There's podcasts, there's books, there's free webinars. Create a plan of the areas that you want to get stronger at, and start leveraging those free tools. And then tap into what does the organization offer for training and development. Most will have some sort of budget or opportunity to take training and other courses, and take advantage of that. I carved my own path. I did not wait for somebody to tell me, hey, here are some opportunities to learn and grow, or here's what you need to get better at. I would ask for feedback, and then I would create my professional development plan just like I created my team goals, and then I would go after them. And I learned a lot from books and webinars, and and taking those or listening to those podcasts. There's lots of good information out there. And then again, that community, I would say, is a central part of my success. People poured into me there. I was able to bring challenges there and get feedback. And those could be professional communities. So like there's professional management associations, or if you're in marketing, there's professional marketing associations. There's female, organizations, because you said a lot of your listeners are women, like female in leadership.
Mhm.
So look at what industry you're in and what area you're in, and find an organization that is there for you to join, and leverage the opportunity to grow those relationships and take advantage of what's available in that community.
I love that. So what are some of your other favorite resources that you like recommend on a regular basis? Like, do you have favorite leadership podcasts? Do you have favorite books that are like must reads for people that you're training and things like that?
My most recent one that I feel like is a favorite that I've been recommending is Worthy by Jamie Lynn.
Yes.
I always forget her
Jamie
middle.
Kern Lima.
Yes, Kern Lima. I always want to
Yeah.
flip her
Yeah.
last name. That one is really good, and it's so great for anyone that's thinking about taking that next step to doing something bigger,
Yeah.
and growing, regardless if it's a leadership role or not. I like all of the John Maxwell series of leadership. He's got some really great books, like 24 Indisputable Laws About Laws About Leadership. And those are actually based in Bible principles. And like you could go back and align those to places where there's leadership found in the Bible ages and ages ago. So
Yeah.
I love that connection. I would say Patrick Lencioni is another good author. I love all of the stuff coming out of Christine Kane's world, about, making an impact and using your influence. She's got a new great podcast where she's bringing on other female leaders, and they're talking about their experiences. So that's a new favorite. I also like Craig Rochelle's leadership podcast as well. So those are a few, but my goodness, I have a list that I go through, and that's my thing to do when I'm on planes or waiting for appointments. I have one in, earpiece in, and always listening. So,
You sound just like me. I'm always listening to another podcast. I
and then
love
of course your podcast. There's
Oh, you're so sweet.
your podcast and your guest as well. I've gotten quite a bit, and it's fun to see people we know, mutual acquaintances, It's fun to
Mhm.
listen to your interaction and learning from both of you in those conversations.
I did not know that Christine Kane had a new podcast, so I'm
She
gonna
does.
have to go find that. I love her. I love everything that she does. She's amazing. And just for ease of people having to go find all this stuff, I'll try to link some of the stuff in the show notes that Doris
Sure.
just referenced so that you can easily just scroll down and you can just click on it and you can go find it. I highly recommend the Jamie Kern Lima book too. It's so good. So, so good. Doris and I got the opportunity to hear her speak. It's been twice now that we've heard her speak on the subject of worthy. And I think women in particular can struggle so much with that feeling of unworthiness and how it just stops you in your tracks. And it's just so good. Such an important conversation to have with whoever is in your circle. You mentioned Patrick Lencioni, and you and I
Yes.
have a shared love of The Working Genius.
Yes. Yes.
I know if you guys if you're not familiar with the Working Genius stuff that's coming out of the Table Group right now, you absolutely need to go find that podcast. I will also link that in the show notes. It will blow your mind, and you need to take the assessment. It's not expensive. I'll link that in the show notes as well. But I know that you're certified in Working Genius. That's
I,
correct, right?
I am. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes, I
that's
am. Yeah.
goals for me in the next 12 months, I'm hoping. So just give us a brief overview of the Working Genius for people who are going, I have no idea what that
Sure.
is. And then tell
Yeah.
us how that impacts your work environment, because I know you use that
Sure.
in your daily.
And
Yeah.
I did. So it's an assessment you could take, and it's not a long assessment, and it really is like it's measuring the way you're most productive, right? So it's this tool based on like there are things that we bring to the table that are gifts, but there's also work environments that are our strengths, some are not, and drain us, and then some we can work with and are a competency. So basically, there's six geniuses. Everybody has two working geniuses. Everybody has two working competencies, and everybody has two frustrations. So essentially, we all have to do parts of those geniuses in our job. It's unavoidable in our home life, in our work environments. But the goal is how can you strive to do work that is using the majority of your time using your working geniuses and not your working frustrations. I always love learning about new tools. And like I said, I love his books. And so I had heard him coming out with this new assessment. I'm like, I'm going to take it. I always love taking new assessments. They're not, perfect, but they give you good reflection
Yeah.
to be thinking about, oh, this really resonates with me. This is really insightful. Let me see how I can use this. So when I took it, I just had this big aha because when I took it, I was feeling very frustrated in my job. And I had been doing it for years. I'm like, I couldn't pinpoint why I was feeling very frustrated. And when I took the Working Genius, I had realized that because of things that were happening over the course of 6 months, this was as the pandemic came through, my job shifted from me being able to work using my two working geniuses, which is discernment and galvanizing. And I'll talk about in a minute what that means, to enablement and tenacity, which were my two frustrations. Like it was not an area I filled my bucket. So if you think of a coffee thermos, if you think about your working genius pouring coffee in the thermos that keeps it, hot all day long, think about that as your working genius. Now think about just a styrofoam cup where you pour in coffee. Your working competencies are that over time, you don't want to do them forever, but you can get them done and you can actually be good at it, right? And then your frustrations, think about a coffee cup with a hole at the bottom. Like if you have to spend all your time in that, it just sucks the energy out of you.
Yeah.
So I had a new team that I had taken on. I'm like, I always think assessments or book studies are good ways to do team bonding and really learn
Yeah.
and grow together. So we did it as a team because I took on a new team and I said, how do we absorb this new team in and really help each other understand each other, but then absorb it into the team culture? Because the culture was working really well and I didn't want that to shift because we were bringing in new team members. So we did it. It changed the language for us because people
Yeah.
had aha moments with, I get why she asks those questions when she shows up in meetings now. I understand where they're coming from now when they do that. So essentially what's happening is every one of us have strengths, but sometimes our strengths can frustrate each other. So like if you're in a meeting where you're generating ideas, you want people with a working genius of wonder, right? And idea generation. You don't need people of enablement tenacity who are ready to like, let's execute. What
Let's
are the
do
one
it.
through 10 steps? I'm ready to
Yeah.
go. What are the details? And you can't do that when you're in generation like solving mode, right? Um, or opposite, you've decided you're going to execute on an idea and you're getting teams ready and doing some training to execute. And then suddenly your person with the working genius of wonder is like, well, what if we did this instead? And what if we, and starting to idea generate all over again. We're like, wait a minute, we're in like execution here.
Yeah.
We're
Way
getting
past
ready
that.
to go. We need to go. So what was happening because it was COVID and there was a lot of change and a lot of chaos, I was spending more time in my frustrations of like
Mhm.
constantly repeating steps, constantly like checking the list, like let's get this done and like cajoling and moving forward. And it was draining my energy versus in the area of like, hey, we have this new idea and this is how we're going to execute. Let's go and getting people excited about vision and moving forward. And then I just naturally am able to, because one, because of the time I've been in the organization, but two, knowing the higher ed space, I'm able to spot a good idea very quickly because I know what it takes to execute. And so we weren't generating a ton of new ideas because we were just trying to get through all
Yeah.
these questions that kept coming up. And so it was like this big aha for me. I'm like, I got to shift that. Like, how do I rebalance my calendar and rebalance the work that I'm doing and
Mhm.
hand off the stuff that are frustrations to people that really love that kind of work?
Yeah.
Like, who can do that instead? And then it just changed our relationship. So now sometimes in team meetings, we're like, okay, we need the idea or we need the wondering. That's what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
Or we're in execution. This is what I need help with. So making sure it also helps us decide who goes on project teams at what point of the project so that people get to work at their strengths and what really generates energy and makes them more productive.
I'm
So
s-
it's been a
I'm
great
so
experience.
geeky about all of that stuff. And I think we probably need to do a whole podcast on working genius because I could literally talk about it forever.
Yeah.
It's crazy how
Yeah.
knowing just these few key things about how God wired you can change not only your attitude going into different things because you have better understanding about yourself, but you're also understanding other people better. I had my husband and a few of my kids take the Working Genius assessment, and now they just came out with one for students.
They
And
do. Yes, they do.
so it's like you learn even about the people that you're living with and what their geniuses and competencies and frustrations are, and you're like, oh, well, that
Right.
makes a lot of sense, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, and then when you get into it, like as you start to learn the details, because then you can he has a book now that you can actually read that goes
Mhm.
deeper too, and obviously his podcast goes into it. But you start to so you don't necessarily like I don't have to have somebody take the assessment now to understand who they might be because there's signs like things that
Yeah,
energize them, things that really excite them, where they thrive. So you start to recognize those signs, and then you just want to make sure as a leader you're creating opportunities for people to spend more time in that area. Now, like I said, you can't completely avoid all six.
sure.
The goal is, as a leader, sometimes I do have to be right there alongside people and really creating the steps 1 through 10 and encouraging everybody through each step, especially on hard changes. But I don't want to do that 100% of the time, and I shouldn't have to do that 100% of the time. So it's really understanding that and balancing the time you're spending in each of those geniuses.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. This has been such an amazing conversation. I think there's so much value that is sitting in these little minutes. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you want to hit?
I would just say that if you're aspiring to be a leader, like hang in there. There's lots of opportunities to lead. And if you're in a leadership role right now where you're feeling frustrated, reach out and have conversations with people that are in leadership that can encourage you because you're there for a reason. And if your motivations are right for that leadership role, your voice is needed and you need to be operating in that environment to be able to influence direction and decisions. And then I would say, don't get so hard on yourself. We are so hard on ourselves as women. We beat ourselves up for things all the time. We're always learning. Leaders do not know it all. There's always going to be opportunities to learn. I've been in leadership for 30 years and I'm still learning stuff every day. There's opportunities to learn from others, even those that you lead. And so, not feeling afraid that you don't know something or start to beat yourself up when you don't know something, go find the resource. There's plenty out there. Reach out and
Yeah.
talk to somebody. But use your voice. To me, it breaks my heart when I know people are capable and then they feel like they can't speak up or don't want to speak up because they're not feeling like they have something to offer. And so I look for those things. So if you're an individual that's struggling with that, just reach out to somebody who's in leadership and have a conversation, because I believe you're there for a
Yeah.
reason and the world needs your voice.
So good. Well, Doris, thank you so much for sharing all of your wisdom with us today. I know that people are going to get a lot of value out of it. And if you're anything like me and you listen to podcasts while you're driving, this is probably one that you're going to want to go back and listen to when you're not driving so you can take notes, because I for sure am going to go back and listen with a notepad and a pen. There's so many little nuggets that I need to write down to commit to memory. So again, Doris, thank you so much for giving us your time. I appreciate you so much.
Well, thank you for having me and for inviting me. I enjoyed our conversation.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I enjoyed having it. I hope you gleaned a whole lot of information. And like I said inside the podcast, you may want to go back and listen again with your notepad and pen so that you can write down some of the nuggets that Doris dropped in our time together. I've listed a bunch of the resources that she mentioned off inside the show notes, so be sure and check those out. And I hope you guys join us next week for another great episode of Her Faith at Work. Have a great week.
Thanks for joining me for another episode of Her Faith at Work. If the Lord put someone on your heart that you think needs to hear this message today, will you just smash that share button? And if you haven't already followed the show, I would love for you to do that. Super extra points if you hop over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a review. That helps the algorithm pick us up and drop us right in the AirPods of people that need to hear what the Lord is saying to them today. I hope you'll come back for the next episode of Her Faith at Work. The podcast comes out every Wednesday. And if you look down in the show notes, I've even got a couple of free downloads for you that I think you will really enjoy. With that, have a great week. See you next time.